That evening felt colder than it should have been for late spring. I remember it because the breeze that hit my face as I stepped out of the car made me shiver, not from temperature, but from something else I couldn't name yet. I'd left work 2 hours earlier than usual. No emergency, no schedule change. Just a strange impulse I couldn't shake. Maybe I was just tired. Or maybe I had finally stopped ignoring the unease I hadn't been able to name for months. As I turned the corner onto our street, I noticed a car parked about a dozen feet from our driveway. A sleek, dark gray sedan. Windows tinted. No bumper stickers. It didn't belong to any of our neighbors, at least none I knew. And I knew most of them. We weren't the closest-knit community, but we had our routines. This car didn't fit. I slowed the car and parked in our driveway. The house looked the same as always, quiet, clean, a single light glowing behind the curtains of the upstairs bedroom. But the feeling that greeted me wasn't the usual calm. It was hollow. Like walking into a stage set instead of a home. I didn't slam the car door. I didn't even jingle my keys as I entered. I don't know why. Something in me chose silence over routine. Inside, the house smelled faintly of jasmine, Hannah's favorite candle scent. It had burned low on the kitchen counter, its soft flicker casting long shadows across the marble. There was no music playing. No clatter of cooking or the usual half-finished mug of tea by the sink. Her shoes were by the door, heels I didn't recognize. Red, sharp, expensive-looking. Not the kind of thing she usually wore to lounge around after work. I heard her voice before I saw her. It drifted from upstairs, light, animated, with a tinge of laughter that was more an asterisk mate than casual. "No, stop it," she said, followed by a giggle. The kind she used to reserve for lazy weekend mornings in bed. "You're bad." I stood at the foot of the stairs. My hand rested on the banister, but I didn't move yet. My breath held itself without me noticing. Then, a beat of silence. Like she had heard something. And when her voice came again, it had changed. Tight. Cold. Measured. "Yes. That's fine. I'll send it." Now I moved. Each step up the stairs felt heavier than the last. Halfway up, I noticed the door to our bedroom was mostly closed, just enough of a crack for the light to escape. When I pushed it open, she looked up, startled for a second, eyes wide. Then the mask dropped back into place. Calm. Almost bored. "Oh hey," she said casually, shutting the laptop with a soft snap. "Didn't expect you back this early." I nodded. I was trying to make my face look neutral, but I'm not sure I pulled it off. "Just wanted to beat traffic," I said. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed, wearing a robe I hadn't seen in weeks, silky, pale blue, the one I had bought for her birthday last year. Her hair was still damp. Freshly washed. She smelled faintly of perfume, but not the one she usually wore around me. This one was heavier, muskier, like she had dressed for someone else. She motioned toward her laptop. "Just a quick Zoom call with Liam from the team. He needed help with the pitch deck for Monday." I didn't want to make him wait. Her voice was smooth. Practiced. She was always good at keeping her composure. But her eyes were darting too much to the nightstand, to the hallway behind me, to the clock on the wall. That's when I noticed the wine. 2 glasses. One half full. One untouched. A bottle of red stood open on the dresser. Hannah rarely drank red, she said it made her sleepy. But this one had been poured deliberately. The glasses were identical, expensive. The kind we kept in the top cabinet and only brought out for company. I pointed at them. "Didn't realize we were celebrating something." She smiled too quickly. "Oh, that." She gave a little shrug. I was feeling theatrical, I guess. I poured one for myself and one for my imaginary client. Just felt like having a little pretend happy hour after a long day. I laughed politely. But something had shifted inside me, like a quiet click in the back of my mind, the sound of a door locking. The room looked too arranged. Too intentional. The bed had been hastily smoothed over, but one of the pillows still had an indentation that wasn't from her. Her laptop screen was dark now, but I could still see the faint reflection of a paused window in the glass. It wasn't a work platform. It was a video call, maybe FaceTime. She stood up suddenly and walked to the bathroom, saying something about rinsing out her conditioner. The moment she left the room, I sat on the bed, staring at the second glass. I touched it. It was still cold. Not fresh, but not old either. When she came back, she looked refreshed. Too quickly. Like she'd spent 10 seconds forcing herself back into a role. I tried to believe her. I tried to dismiss what I had seen. But something was already unwinding inside me, threads pulling free from a fabric I thought was solid. She asked me how work had been. I gave vague answers. She didn't press. Normally, she would have. Later that night, as she slept next to me, I stared at the ceiling, wide awake. Her breathing was slow and even. I listened to it like it was someone else's soundtrack. What disturbed me most wasn't the suspicion. It was how easily I'd accepted the lie. How quickly I'd smiled, nodded, and let her explanation settle like dust over fresh footprints. I hadn't questioned her. I hadn't made a scene. I didn't even ask who the second glass was really for. But I knew. I knew the moment I walked into that room. That car wasn't random. That robe wasn't for comfort. That smile wasn't real. And for the first time in my marriage, I felt like a stranger in my own home. I had no proof, no facts to hold up like evidence, just that cold certainty in my gut, whispering, something's wrong. Something's been wrong for a while. And I had just chosen, finally, to listen. Once a doubt settles in your mind, it never really leaves. It grows, morphs, becomes something alive. That night, after I saw the wine glass, the robe, the carefully composed room, I didn't sleep. Not really. I turned over 100 times, listening to the soft, steady rhythm of Hannah's breathing next to me. She looked peaceful. As if nothing had happened. As if everything she told me was perfectly normal. But my mind was racing, catching up to what my instincts had been trying to say for weeks. Maybe months. The next morning, I woke up with one thought looping in my head like a broken record. What else have I missed? It didn't take long to remember. Once I opened that door, the memories came flooding in, scenes I had quietly accepted, red flags I had folded neatly into drawers labeled trust and marriage. But now they screamed for attention. Hannah had started working more evenings. She's a freelance brand photographer, which meant irregular hours, sure. But for years, she'd kept a fairly predictable schedule. Shoots were during the day, usually in natural light. Edits happened at home. Meetings, when necessary, were short coffee shop catch-ups or Zoom calls in our living room. But lately, she had begged *N dressing up more. Putting on full makeup. Heels. Spritzing herself with that same unfamiliar perfume. And always with the same casual excuse: client shoot, branding session, night aesthetic work. At first, I believed her. I wanted to believe her. I trusted her professionalism. But the changes were subtle and undeniable. She didn't ask for help loading her gear anymore. Didn't show me previews of the photos like she used to. Didn't even mention the names of her clients. And there was her phone. It became her shadow. It followed her everywhere: bathroom, kitchen, laundry room. She used to leave it charging on the nightstand, screen face up. Now it was always tucked away, face down. Notifications silenced. One evening I noticed she had changed her password. I asked about it casually as we folded laundry. She laughed and said, "Security update." Then she kissed my cheek and changed the subject. At the time it felt harmless. Responsible even. But now I saw it for what it really was, a wall. She had started stepping out to take calls too. Just 5 minutes. Just someone checking in about a booking. But it never felt professional. Her tone would drop into something softer, more playful. Once, while I was in the garage fixing a shelf, I heard her through the open window. She thought I was still out shopping. She was on the phone, laughing low and warm, saying, "Yes, of course. He has no idea." Then a pause. Then more laughter. When I walked in 5 minutes later, she was scrolling Instagram like nothing had happened. "What was that about?" I asked. She smiled. "Your birthday gift," she said. "I'm terrible at keeping secrets, so don't press me." I didn't. I actually smiled, flattered by the idea. I even forgot about it for a while. But she never gave me a birthday gift. Not that year. Another time, I noticed she smelled like cologne. Not strong, not overwhelming, but faint, unfamiliar. I leaned in to kiss her neck, and there it was, a musky, masculine scent. I pulled back instinctively, but she caught my expression and said, "New aromatherapy spray from the studio. Smells weird, right?" I nodded, pretending to accept it. But inside, I felt something fray a little further. Her moods began to shift in strange ways too. Some days she came home glowing, vibrant, too energized for someone who claimed to have worked for 6 hours behind a lens. Other days, she was distant, irritable, like she couldn't stand being around me. She'd barely speak during dinner, then disappear upstairs with a glass of wine and her laptop. She said she was just tired. Creative burnout, she called it. But it wasn't that. It was something else entirely. I remember the week she canceled our dinner with friends. We'd had it planned for over a month, a small get-together with Dave and Marissa, our favorite couple to double with. Hannah claimed she'd been booked for a last-minute evening shoot and couldn't reschedule. She seemed genuinely frustrated, even showed me a fake calendar block on her screen. But when I texted Marissa to apologize, she replied, "No worries. We'll catch you guys next week. Tell Hannah I hope she feels better." Feel better? Hannah hadn't mentioned being sick. I hadn't told anyone she was. I didn't ask Marissa to clarify. I just stared at that message for a long time. It all started adding up. Or rather, it all stopped adding up. The emotional distance. The random bursts of affection followed by days of cold indifference. Her new obsession with fitness, which would have been great except it wasn't about health. It was about changing. Reinventing. She'd started taking early morning classes and coming home with wet hair, flushed cheeks, and an excuse about forgetting to text me because her phone had died. Twice a week turned into 4. Then 5. I offered to join her one day. She laughed it off. Said it was her time. And then there was the day I came home to find the living room windows slightly cracked, just enough for voices to slip through. I parked outside and heard her talking to someone on speakerphone. The tone was unmistakable. Flirty. Familiar. A side of her I hadn't seen in months. As I walked up the steps, the voices cut off. By the time I opened the door, she was in the kitchen, humming to herself, phone nowhere in sight. She acted like everything was normal. And I let her. The scariest part wasn't that I had missed the signs, it was that I had noticed them and still refused to face them. Like I was complicit in my own deception. Every time I sensed something was wrong, I talked myself down. You're overthinking, she's just busy, you've been distant too, maybe that's part of it. But it wasn't me. And deep down I knew that. I started watching more closely. Not obsessively, not yet, but with sharper eyes. I began noticing how she always kept her car keys in her purse now. How she locked her laptop when she left a room. How she smiled when texting, then looked up quickly to check if I had seen. And I noticed how I had started lying too, mostly to myself. Saying I was fine. That we were fine. That we were going through a phase and we'd come out of it. But the truth was growing louder with each memory. With each business dinner that ended past midnight. With each shower she took immediately upon arriving home. With each subtle withdrawal from our life together. She was slipping away from me and had been for longer than I dared admit. The Hannah I loved still lived in our home, still shared my bed, still smiled at me in the mornings. But she wasn't really there. And maybe she hadn't been for a long time. Sometimes you wish you were wrong. You wish the pit in your stomach was just paranoia, just overthinking brought on by stress or boredom. You tell yourself stories to make it all okay. And sometimes, rarely, life gives you the mercy of ambiguity where you can keep pretending. But not always. The truth came for me in a parking lot on a Thursday evening I'll never forget. It wasn't even me who saw it first. It was Trevor. Trevor and I had worked together for 8 years. Good guy. Reliable. Straight talker. He had his own problems, we all did, but betrayal wasn't one of them. That night, he called me around 8:30. I almost didn't answer. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through the same 3 shows I didn't care about while Hannah was at a late client dinner. Ethan, he said, voice low, serious. You need to come over. Now. I have something you need to see. I drove to his place with that growing heaviness in my chest, the kind that crushes hope but won't let it die entirely. When I walked in, Trevor was sitting in his den, laptop open. He didn't say anything. Just turned the screen toward me. It was a video. Blurry at first, grainy from distance, but clear enough. A woman in a tight black dress standing beside a man in a black jacket. She was laughing, tossing her hair back. Then she hugged him. Full body. Long familiar. Her face turned slightly toward the camera and my heart stopped. It was Hannah. No mistake. No chance I was imagining it. The timestamp read 7:41 p.m. That same night. The location? A parking lot outside a restaurant I'd never heard of, not the one she told me she'd be going to. And the man beside her wasn't a client. He wasn't from her photography world at all. He was a stranger. At least to me. I sat back, mouth dry. What the hell is this? I asked, though I already knew. Trevor looked pained. I didn't want to believe it either. But I saw Laura there too. With a different guy. His wife. Who, just like Hannah, had said she was staying home that night with a headache. We stared at each other. 2 men both lied to in perfect synchronization. Why were you even there? I asked. He hesitated. Gut feeling. I saw Laura texting all afternoon and smiling in that, that way. So I followed her. Didn't mean to. Just couldn't help it. Then I saw your wife. The betrayal doubled. Not just mine, but his. And we realized something else. It wasn't just one mistake. It was a pattern. By the next day, the numbness had turned into something else, a need for clarity. For facts. We couldn't afford to guess anymore. We needed to know the full truth, whatever it cost. That's when Nate came in. Nate was the third of us, younger, tech-savvy, sharp-eyed. He had been quiet for weeks, withdrawing from conversations, always checking his phone. When we told him what we found, he didn't act surprised. Just sighed and nodded. My wife's been acting weird too, he said. You think it's connected? He pulled up a message on his phone. Private party this weekend. Rented house by the bay. Just close friends. It was from his wife, sent a few nights earlier. Sounded harmless on the surface. But in context, it was a flare in the sky. We looked at each other and knew this was it. This was where it would all unravel. So we made a plan. Friday night. We would go together, no warning, no texts. Just show up and see for ourselves. It was an expensive house tucked away off a coastal road about 45 minutes from town. Gated driveway. Secluded trees. Too quiet. Their cars were already parked outside. Hannah's silver SUV. Laura's black sedan. And Nate's wife's little white coupe. All in a row like trophies. We didn't knock. We didn't need to. The front door wasn't locked. Music pulsed from the inside, low bass, the kind of rhythm meant to stir the body more than the soul. We stepped in and the moment felt like walking into a different universe. Dim lights. Laughter. Women dressed like they were auditioning for something wild. Drinks in every hand. Couples, some familiar, most not, leaning too close. Whispering. Touching. Dancing in ways that couldn't be explained as friendly. And then we saw them. Hannah. Laura. Nate's wife, Paige. All there, moving among the chaos like it was a second skin. Like it was home. Hannah stood near the fireplace, a glass of wine in one hand, the other resting on the waist of the same man from the parking lot video. He leaned into her, said something in her ear. She threw her head back laughing, pressing closer. Her fingers toyed with the button of his jacket. She didn't see me. None of them did. We didn't cause a scene. Didn't shout. Didn't reveal ourselves. Not yet. We stood there long enough to see it all, every lie confirmed, every doubt validated. And then we turned and left. Back in the car, no one spoke for a while. The silence was louder than anything we'd heard in that house. It was the sound of something ending, not just trust, but a whole chapter of our lives. On the way home, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from rage. Not from heartbreak. But from the clarity. Because now I knew. Undeniably. Unforgivably. Hannah was cheating. It wasn't a flirtation. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a single night or a lapse in judgment. It was a life she'd built parallel to mine, and she had never once expected me to see it. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, staring at her pillow. Everything around me was the same. The curtains she picked. The candle she liked. Her book on the nightstand, halfway finished. But I couldn't unsee what I had seen. Couldn't unknow what I now knew. When she walked through the door the next morning, I didn't say a word. She smiled. Said she was tired. Gave me a kiss on the cheek like always. I looked at her and felt nothing but silence. Not rage. Not grief. Just silence. The kind that comes before a storm. When someone breaks you, your first instinct is to scream. To confront. To demand answers, apologies, even if you know they'll be lies. That's what I wanted to do when I saw her in that house, her hands on that stranger, laughing like nothing mattered. But instead, I walked away. Quietly. Controlled. That silence became my shield. And eventually, my we*P*N. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the digital clock on my nightstand crawl from 1 minute to the next, thinking about every word, every fake smile, every quiet betrayal that had led me here. When the sun finally rose, I felt strangely calm. A decision had been made inside me, not about confrontation, but something else. This wouldn't end in screaming. It wouldn't end with tears or explanations. No. It would end exactly the way it began, quietly, behind closed doors. But this time I would be the one in control. Later that morning, I met with Trevor and Nate at a diner just off the highway. It was early, barely 7 a.m. The kind of hour that made the fluorescent lights look harsher than usual. We sat in a booth in the corner, coffee growing cold in front of us. None of us said it aloud at first, but the question hung heavy between us. Now what? I don't want to just leave, Trevor finally said, voice low. Not like this. Not while she gets to walk away pretending none of it happened. I don't want revenge, Nate added. I want exposure. Those words hit something inside me. Exposure. The perfect word. Because that's what they'd all been doing, hiding. Lying. Living parallel lives while we played the role of clueless husbands. They wore their secrets like armor, believing we were too naive or too busy to notice. But that fantasy was over. I went home and pulled out an old wooden box from the back of the closet, one Hannah hadn't opened in years. Inside were memories from the beginning, love letters, printed photos, old boarding passes from our honeymoon. I flipped through them like a stranger browsing someone else's life. It was strange how easily nostalgia became ammunition. Then I started collecting the real we*P*NS. It took less than an hour to access her iCloud backups. She had once asked me to help her recover deleted photos from her phone, and I'd helped her set up the automatic sync. She probably forgot I had access. Or maybe she assumed I'd never look. But there it was, months worth of messages, photos, videos, all backed up, all recoverable. I didn't even have to dig. Threads labeled with emojis. Videos in hotel rooms. *TS of calendar events renamed client shoot that matched locations I now recognized as beach rentals and cabins 2 towns over. One thread in particular stood out, saved under the name Emily Cherry Blossom. But the messages weren't between women. The language, tone, and attached selfies made that clear. I didn't cry. I didn't feel rage. I felt like a detective in a film solving a case that had haunted him for years. Except the victim had been me and the murder was slow. I cataloged everything. *TS, download folders, backup copies on a secure USB. I organized the files in neat folders, dates, photos, chats, locations. I even labeled a folder lies she told me and filled it with side-by-side comparisons, her calendar entries versus actual timestamps of photos. That same week, Trevor and Nate began gathering their own evidence. Trevor found Uber receipts to unfamiliar addresses matched against dates Laura claimed she was working late. Nate went further, using a cheap GPS tracker he'd slipped into Paige's gym bag 2 weeks earlier. Her workouts, it turned out, included long stops at a residential condo in the city. We didn't just want the truth. We wanted precision. Cold, undeniable clarity. If they were going to lie to us for this long, the least we could do was make their truths impossible to deny. But we weren't reckless. We didn't stop acting like husbands. That was the brilliance of the plan. I still made Hannah coffee in the mornings. Still asked how her day was. Still pretended to believe her. She seemed pleased by my passivity, almost smug, like she had dodged a storm and come out dry. One night, she even said, "Things feel peaceful again, don't they?" I smiled. They do. In a way, she was right. There was peace, just not the kind she imagined. Because for the first time in months, I had clarity. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't afraid of what I'd find. I already had it all. The truth in full color, in files and folders, in dates and data. And I had a plan. We chose a date. It felt fitting, in the most twisted way, our wedding anniversary. Hannah had been planning a party. Low-key, she said. Just a few friends. Some champagne. You'll love it. Of course, I agreed. I even helped her order catering, picked up a new shirt for the occasion, pretended to be excited. And every time she looked at me, every time she smiled, that smile I now knew was fake, I just smiled back, knowing exactly what was coming. In the days leading up to it, I added a few finishing touches. I created a slide presentation. Not a dramatic one, just *TS. Messages. Photos. Dates. I didn't add captions. I didn't need to. The images spoke for themselves. I loaded the files onto a flash drive. Backed them up in 3 places. Sent an anonymous tip to a local gossip blog I knew Hannah followed obsessively. They wouldn't publish without confirmation, but I made sure they had enough to start asking questions. Then I packed the wooden box, the same one from the closet. I placed inside it the things that mattered most to her image, our framed wedding photo, her old journal entries about forever, a few of her own quotes from letters she'd written me. I wanted her to feel it. Not just be exposed, but confronted with who she used to be. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. But it wasn't dread. It was anticipation. Like the calm before a performance you've rehearsed 1,000 times. And make no mistake, this was a performance. When the day came, she was radiant. She wore a dress I hadn't seen before, expensive, clearly new. She moved through the room like a hostess on a pedestal, hugging friends, sipping champagne, laughing in that carefree way I used to love. And as I watched her, I didn't feel hate. I felt distance. The kind that comes after a long journey through fire when you realize the other side doesn't look like home anymore. As the room filled up, friends, coworkers, distant relatives, I waited. I let her give her toast. Her voice was warm, nostalgic, grateful. Then I stood up, walked to the front table, and placed the wooden box in front of her. I didn't say a word. I opened the lid. And then I turned to the projector on the far wall and pressed play. Time doesn't move the same way when the truth explodes. It stretches, freezes, warps. People say your life flashes before your eyes in moments like that, but for me, it wasn't my life. It was hers. Hannah's. All of it. Collapsing. Frame by frame, in front of everyone she had ever tried to impress. The projector cast a quiet hum as the first image flickered onto the screen. The room fell silent almost instantly, as if the air itself had gone still. The picture was simple: Hannah, smiling, her hand resting on the chest of a man no one recognized, but everyone knew wasn't me. It was sharp, candid, and damning. The slideshow rolled on. A series of screensh asterisk ts followed, message threads in asterisk mate selfies, calendar overlaps. One by one, every carefully constructed lie peeled away like wallpaper soaked through with truth. I didn't narrate. I didn't explain. I stood a few feet away, hands in my pockets, watching her world unravel with the same quiet resolve she once used to lie to my face. She stood frozen near the front of the room, still holding her champagne glass. Her smile didn't vanish at once, it trembled, then slowly cracked like porcelain. She turned toward the screen, eyes scanning the evidence. At first, she looked confused. Then panicked. Her eyes widened as if willing the images to disappear. They didn't. Her mouth opened slightly as if to say something, but no sound came out. Somewhere in the room, a gasp cut through the silence. Someone dropped a fork. Another person whispered, "Is that?" Phones came out. Heads turned. I heard a woman murmur, "Oh my God." The sound of chairs scraping followed. Movement. Tension. And Hannah, still standing, still not moving, finally stepped forward and tried to block the projection with her hand. It didn't help. Her shadow only made the betrayal more visible. "Turn it off," she finally said, voice shaky. "Turn it off right now." But no one moved. Not me. Not the guests. The images kept rolling, another man, another hotel timestamp, a love note in her handwriting. She lunged toward the laptop on the side table, but I had already locked the file. She couldn't stop it. She turned to me. "Ethan, what is this?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "What are you doing?" Her tone was familiar, soft, defensive, carefully composed. The same one she had used that first night when I caught her with the wine and 2 glasses. The same tone she used to lie about late-night shoots and mysterious clients. But now it didn't work. It had no power. I said nothing. Just looked at her the way a stranger would, not with anger, not with sadness. Just observation. Like I was watching the last scene of a play I'd been trapped inside for too long. People began to rise. Some walked out. Others looked away. One man recorded the screen, capturing the sequence of photos in quiet disbelief. No one clapped. No one comforted her. They just watched, frozen in the slow-motion wreckage of a woman they thought they knew. Hannah turned, frantic now. "Please, this isn't what it looks like." "It's not," but her voice cracked. She stopped mid-sentence, unable to finish. The room was full, yet she stood alone. I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. Outside, the night felt warm, strangely warm, considering the coldness of what had just taken place. I could still hear muffled voices inside, the murmur of confusion and judgment. But out here, in the darkness, I felt nothing but clarity. In the days that followed, the aftermath rippled like a stone tossed into still water. She called, texted, emailed. She even left voicemails, desperate, pleading, angry. "How could you do this? We could have talked about it. I made a mistake, but you just ruined everything." She didn't understand. I wasn't trying to ruin her. I wasn't trying to destroy anything. I was simply returning the truth to its rightful place in the open. For too long, I'd lived in a version of reality shaped by her convenience. A world where she got to hide and lie and smile while I carried the weight of silence. I didn't want her to suffer. I wanted her to see what she'd done. Not just in private, not whispered in a hallway, but out loud. In the same arena where she had paraded the image of a perfect marriage. She stopped showing up at the house after the 3rd week. Before that, she would drive by slowly, park for a few minutes, then pull away. Once I saw her sit on the curb across the street and cry. I watched from the 2nd-floor window and didn't move. I couldn't. Not out of spite, but because whatever bridge had once connected us was now just ashes in the wind. Mutual friends messaged me, some in support, others in confusion. "Why didn't you just leave?" they asked. "Why make a scene?" I didn't respond. They hadn't lived in the slow collapse. They hadn't tasted the constant gaslighting, the nights of doubt, the erosion of self that came from being lied to with a straight face by someone you once would have died for. Leaving wouldn't have been enough. It would have let the lie breathe longer. And I wasn't going to carry it anymore. The fallout continued for weeks. Her business pages were flooded with strange comments. Clients canceled bookings. One of the local magazines she'd contributed to removed her name from their contributor list. She deleted her personal accounts for a while, then brought them back, sanitized, quiet, a shell of what they used to be. I didn't cheer. I didn't celebrate. I didn't watch. Because even though I had exposed her, I didn't want to live in that space forever. I didn't want revenge to become my identity. The hardest part was returning to silence after the storm. Not because I missed the chaos, but because the silence finally revealed what was left of me. There were days I didn't know who I was without the hurt, without the mission, without the mask of being okay. But I knew one thing, I wasn't going back. I wasn't going to forgive what had been so deliberately hidden. I wasn't going to sit across from her at a cafe one day, sipping coffee, pretending we had both made mistakes. This wasn't mutual. It wasn't complicated. It was betrayal. Cruel. Repetitive. Calculated. The house felt bigger after she left. Too big some days. I found myself walking into rooms and forgetting why I went there. Her scent still lingered in the sheets for weeks. I changed the bedding twice before I stopped noticing it. I deleted her contact, then blocked the number. Emails still came, longer, more poetic now. She quoted the past, begged for a meeting. I never answered. Not because I didn't have words, but because nothing I could say would bring back the version of me who once believed her. That man was gone. And in his place stood someone new, bruised, yes, but clear-eyed. And finally free.